Welcome to another Q&A video. In this video, we are going to talk about how to get started with programming if you're not good at math and if you don't have a lot of money. So with limited funds and with limited math skills, can you still become a programmer? Of course you can. Of course you can. And I highly hope that you do become a programmer. Let me just say that this question was asked on Scaleabout. So if you surely want an answer from me, or if you surely want to get your question into the Q&As, or if you want to get a private answer from me, Scaleabout is currently the surest way of getting an answer from me. Anyways, to you who asked the question, thank you very much. Let's dive into the topic. Essentially, I understand your question as that, right? If you have not a lot of money, and if you don't consider yourself a mathy kind of person, or very good at math, how do you become a programmer? How do you get started in programming? Especially on your free time, right? So I guess also time is a constraint here, not just money and math skills. Let me open by saying that I still don't consider myself especially good in math, right? Quite the contrary. Now I actually do find it quite interesting, but I'm not necessarily very good at it, right? So I'm still kind of struggling with that. So in my mind, it seems that there are tons and tons and tons of jobs for programmers, even though they're not good at math. Right? It's not needed, right? Of course it's needed if you go to, let's say, I mean, I'm kind of guessing here, but if you want to do sort of very low level in the stack, in the computational stack, very low level stuff, sort of machine, well, low in the stack essentially, right? Close to the machine, then you probably need a bit more of math. Or if you want to do something which is very optimized, right? So if you want to work with stuff where performance is like extremely important. Or if you want to do stuff like, I don't know, like aerospace or things like this. Or if you want to do heavy graphics works, for example, like rendering engines for games or stuff like that, right? Or 3D or anything like that, right? Then you probably need a lot of math, especially I guess for optimization. But also if you're into games, you need some level of trigonometry and all that stuff. But with all that said, right? So I started out by hacking up games in Flash, in what was then Macromedia Flash, right? Which then turned into Adobe Flash, which then turned into, well, the scrapped project that the web hates. But yeah, what was my point? The point was I wasn't good at math at all, right? But I still managed enough trigonometry to figure out the stuff, the calculations that was needed in order to to develop the games that I wanted to develop. And so yeah, Google is a great source for that. You can definitely figure that stuff out on the fly. So you don't at all need math to become a good programmer at all, right? What's even interesting, I would say, right, is that I'm a huge fan of functional programming, or I shouldn't put it in terms of fanness. I should simply say that I think inevitably we will move towards functional programming, whether people want it or not. And I guess the fear would be that you would have to be good at math to become a functional programmer. And I really don't think that's the case. I really think you can be an excellent programmer in terms of using functional programming without knowing math, like particularly well, right? I mean, the sort of main math analogy in functional programming is essentially that equality should be equality, right? Equality should not be assignment. So it's not like if you take so if you say x equals 5, that should mean that x and 5 are equivalent, not that you've taken the value 5 and you've put that inside of x. Right? I guess that's sort of the main math analogy, or the main thing that sort of you have to bring over from math. But then, of course, like if you dive into the theoretical depths of functional programming, it probably helps if you're good at math, right? But in order to use it, you don't need it at all, right? Just like you don't need category theory in order to write great programs in functional style. But anyway, okay, now I'm going off topic. The point is, you don't need math. Don't worry about it, right? Of course, if you want to go into computer science, you probably need math, right? I would assume you don't, I mean, if you're going into the education, you don't need to be already good at math. You just need to be, you just need to have enough skills for them to allow you into the program, and then you'll figure it out during that time, right? You have to just be open-minded enough to learn in class. But again, now we're discussing learning programming without going into, for example, computer science. So let's move into the education part. Let me here just say that if you have the funds and the time, I am one of those people who think that it's definitely worth it to get educated in programming, whether it is computer science or information systems, which I did, or like business information systems, or kind of get some kind of schooling in programming. Sorry, the focus is getting messed up. Anyways, but yeah, so if you have the time and the money, I think that's definitely worth it, right? From this perspective, the thing that you tend to get from a university education is that they tend to guide you through, like in a good university education, and hopefully kind of, to guide you through the things that you should know regardless of what's in fashion currently right now, right? So for example, with the JavaScript community, right? People throw around, you should be using this framework or this library or this framework or this style of writing code or right? And it's all just, not just, but there's a lot of hipsters in the programming community who tend to think that you're not cool if you're not doing this particular new fly thing, right? Which, when you have a solid education, hopefully you can see through that and you can say, well, that's not actually anything new. It's just another way of doing this old thing that we've been doing forever, right? And I'm not saying that because we should be cynical as programmers, but because we should be critical, I guess. I'm not sure if that's the word, but we should not fall for the latest fashion or the latest trends, right? We should simply say, well, okay, well, is that useful or is it not useful? Can I already do that in the framework or the library or the way I'm writing code right now, right? Because if you can and there's no benefit, then whatever, right? So that's where I think that there's some true value to a university education, and that's probably also when we get into math, okay, kind of. But anyways, can you be a productive programmer without that? Of course, right? Can you have a great life as a programmer? Of course, right? Can you write really useful programs that people use every day? Can you build a startup? Of course, right? Of course, like there's nothing stopping you. Like in some sense, programming is very much a craft. It's something that you like Lego bricks or whatever, right? You just pick up pieces, you stack them up, and you build things. And the more you build things, the better you become at building things, right? And then the better you become at building things, and the better you become at building things, and eventually you're building great things. Now, does it help to go through some education in order to have somebody who holds you in the hand and guide you through the process of how you can approach building things? Probably, right? Does it help to have a background in math? Probably. Is it necessary? Absolutely not. Right? And is it then necessary to spend the money on anything like this? Or not just anything like education, but is it necessary to spend money on something in order for this all to work? Not necessarily, right? And here's another point, right? Don't listen to people, like I've surely been guilty of this myself. Don't listen to people who say that you need expensive things in order to become a programmer. I started on this like super crappy old Acer laptop that eventually just fell to pieces, right? Like the backspace key just fell off the keyboard and it was just like totally broken before I even came close to having the money to upgrade that computer. And I was making Flash games, and I was making a tad bit of money, right? Like not tons of money, but at least it was like a proof of concept, right? I was making progress, and I was showing myself that I can actually write code. And I was showing myself that I can actually write code that is useful to someone to the extent where I can actually make a living out of that. And I mean, is there more to it than that, right? Like that's what we do, right? We make progress. So anyways, here's what I would do, super concretely. Use whatever stuff you have. Use whatever hardware you have. Use whatever time you have, okay? I would say, choose a language. A single language. Now I would choose JavaScript, Ruby, or Python. They're all dynamically typed languages, and I would choose that because I think it's probably easier to start in one of those languages unless you're following one resource, like for example a university education or a very good book, right? And I'm not exactly sure which book yet. Like, in some sense, I would think that actually the easiest thing would be to start with a statically typed functional language, right? But then that would be like that would just destroy your head unless you have a good resource that can hold you by the hand and guide you through that. I mean, when I try to learn something like, for example, let's say Haskell, for example, right? I use what is it called, learnuahaskell.com or something like that, and now for approaching Haskell. And then I even have some experience as a programmer, right? Without that, like, my head would just implode because it's pretty, okay, sorry, now I'm exaggerating, but it's I think it's unnecessarily tricky to try to approach statically typed functional programming without having somebody who holds you by the hand. Let me just say that. But if you approach non-functional programming, so sort of a mix of imperative and OO, object-oriented programming, which languages such as, for example, Ruby and JavaScript and Python are, and they are also dynamically typed. They are forgiving to the extent where I think that you can actually just experiment with them and learn, right? And that's like, I think that's a key way to learn programming. So I would start with one of those three languages. I would choose one, and then I would start to build small projects. And I would set up a blog for myself where I document the progress, right? So I would do something like, okay, today I'm gonna try to build a snake, for example, right? So you can check out on my channel, I have a short tutorial where I show how I built the classic snake game using functional programming in JavaScript. Now, this is like, if you're just starting out with programming, this might be over the top because it's functional programming. If it does make sense to you, that movie, right? If it does make sense to you, stick with that, right? The sooner you can move into concepts from functional programming, the better, okay? I think don't listen to people who say you have to learn object-oriented programming first. Don't worry about that, okay? If you understand functional programming, move towards that, right? If you understand things such as map or reduce, move towards that as soon as possible. That's great, right? I think that's cognitively much more valuable than learning how to deal with objects, okay? But anyways, one of those three languages, set up a blog, pick small projects. Okay, today I'm gonna try to build Snake, and then spend like I say today, right? But it might take you, what, 3 months? It might take you 6 months to actually build Snake, right? So if it takes you that long time, maybe you document different pieces on that blog. I would do that to have something to show, right? And maybe you're not exhibitionistic like that, right? But for me, that's a very valuable step in the progress, or that's a very important part, right? To get feedback on the things you're doing, and to be able to look at something and say, oh, okay, I've actually made some kind of progress, right? And the reason I say do it via blog is because I would say when you're learning programming, you don't want to get bogged down by the details of, let's say, publishing on the web, right? So the web is such a mess, and having to deal with like the whole host of like clients and servers, and like I need some hosting and I need domains and like all of this stuff. When you're learning programming, it's not worth it, right? So I would say it's not worth it to build like, okay, well, I'm gonna build my own blog, unless like you're really passionate about that. Then for sure do that, right? But I would say don't worry about the networking stuff and just focus on trying to learn programming first, and then that means build your programs, make screenshots of whatever you're building, right? And then publish those screenshots on your blog, and publish the code on your blog, for example. So that would be one way of showing progress to yourself and to others. And then you can probably interface with others who can, so you can maybe hit someone up and say, oh, okay, check this out, I built this. And then hopefully, right, maybe somebody is kind enough to give you a comment and say, oh, okay, cool thing, congrats, right? Or congrats, maybe you want to have a look at this or this blog post, or maybe you could think in this way. So maybe people would actually help you steer your, or could help you steer your learning forwards. So that's the way I would approach it. One of these three languages, Ruby, Python, JavaScript. Start building small projects, small chunks, right? I'm gonna build a calculator, a snake game, I don't know, like trivial things, right? Like currently I'm trying to build Tetris, Pong. I'm sorry, now I'm just thinking of games, but like simple things, right? Small, concrete, simple things that you can box. You can say, okay, I'm gonna build this project, right? Build like, I don't know, Fibonacci number generator, like super small. You can probably, like if you Google it, you can probably find lots of examples of programming problems that you can approach when learning programming. And also, by the way, viewers, if somebody has a suggestion on such a resource, on a resource listing sort of examples of things that you can approach when you're trying to learn programming, so simple-ish problems that you can solve, please shoot that in the comments. That would be hopefully a great resource for others. So thanks for sharing if something comes to your mind. But okay, anyways, let's wrap this up. I hope that helps. Shortly, the answer is yes, absolutely. And I really hope that you get into programming and welcome to the community. And yeah, and in more detail, one of those 3 languages, find lots of small different things to build them and document them and put them online for the world to see and for you to sort of be proud about, right? So you can see your own progress. And then just go from that. Move into functional programming as soon as you can, right? Not as in, oh, I have to move into functional programming, but as soon as, like, if you find yourself reading stuff that's related to functional programming, or if you do stuff and people say, oh, that's functional programming, then yay, good stuff, man. But otherwise, just keep being productive, right? Just keep writing code and keep finding new problems for yourself to solve, or new problems for you to solve and solve them, right? And move forwards and talk to others. Solid. Thanks a lot for the question. I hope that helps. And yeah, I'll see you on the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.